Okay, and welcome to the next section, which is dungeon crawlers. So I will again go over sort of the target audience first of all for dungeon crawlers, and then go into the codes and conventions and how they appeal to this target audience. Um, I'll just go over a quick little statement I made at the start. So generally, dungeon crawlers are quite similar to RPGs, except there's less of some things like in the RPGs, which we'll go over a bit later, and there's a lot more grinding and replayability within these games. So, for example, I'm going to talk about the age of the players generally first. So the age again is going to be above 16. It's again going to be to do with the PEGI ratings and the minimum age ratings for these games, as it's quite important. Um, though the first sort of target audience is going to be sort of, instead of peaking at 32, it's peaking at 26. This is because, first of all, I haven't written it down, the APM of the players, so the speed they have to react, is going to be a lot higher, and it's going to require a lot more focus for the players. This is generally better for younger audiences, as their reactions are a little bit better, meaning they'll play the games better and have a more positive response from it because it will be a bit easier. The other audience could be one of the ones that, again, grew up in the 1980s. They're sort of the Dungeons and Dragons players, and they have a great feeling of nostalgia towards the genre because of the sort of themes in the game. So I'll just take my first sort of, this is going to be the main one, sort of Diablo 3. The conventions we talk about are, okay, so we'll just quickly have a look at a sort of themes here, just on the character creation. First of all, you can see monster right here. First of all, first thing you see, you got a monster. You got a little golem. You've got a demon hunter behind it with wings. It's sort of, blood coming off this, a glowing sort of like crown, plated armor. These are all very big parts of the fantasy genre, and this is going to really appeal to that sort of audience that is of the age sort of 34 to sort of 50 who did play D&D, and this was the things they could imagine, and being able to visualize it is going to have a really positive response from them, meaning they will enjoy the games, and obviously that's a good thing. We'll next go on to gender, and again I'll be using Diablo to sort of show this. I think that for these games, again, the main sort of gender is going to be male, and that is just because you can see it through. Again, we'll go back onto Diablo. You've got these three demon hunters, they're all female characters. They're all sort of quite a sort of sexualized look for them. It's more to do with the sort of, shape of their bodies. So they're not going to be sort of an overweight character. They're always very in shape. Even though there's not too much sort of going in this game, you can still see, they're not extremely muscly. They're just sort of very expectant of what a sort of woman will feel like in these games, and the way that they've been sexualized has sort of got quite a strong attraction for the male audience. Furthermore, if we go into things like crusaders and barbarians, they're big, muscly characters. That even though the demon hunter doesn't have that, you can still see it whenever you choose sort of the monk. They've got quite a more, I don't know, I think they've got quite a very masculine pose. So, you see the barbarian, shoulders forward, swords forward. He's very sort of in your space. Whereas let's have a look at the wizard. She's sort of leaning back a little bit. Sort of the wings are going sideways. She's got a sideways on. She's not 2 feet looking at you straight on. She's sideways. This sort of shows quite a male dominance of the characters. Same goes with sort of the Crusader again. Even though he is quite a sideways angle, he just dominates the screen because of his size. And this sort of means that this sort of variation and sort of very stereotypical looks for the characters is going to be appealing to that male audience because of this. You could also say though that the fact you do get choice between man, woman, or monster, it means that you are able then to sort of play as the character, and this could mean that maybe potentially a female audience might enjoy this idea. The fact that they can play as a female character, they're a strong female character within the game, This will be effective at appealing to the secondary audience, though I don't believe it will be as effective as the male audience has been appealed to. The sort of social classes of this is going to be anything from E to potentially C1 or potentially B. Again, this is going back to the ages. They're going to be a little bit younger for this one. They're either going to be in university or sort of just entering jobs, mainly because of the speed. So that's going to be for our main audience. Also, I'd like to point out the whole within the games, there are certain sort of elements that will appeal to this. So we'll go into Diablo again, and you can see that we'll go onto a character and we will enter a public game. So we can get a real comparison between I guess our character and others, and then I'll explain what I'm sort of talking about here. Okay, so straight away we're in the game. You know, the first sort of thing you can see is the idea that we've got my character, Paragon level 910, Paragon 866, Paragon 783, Paragon 1090. This sort of has a hierarchy and shows that this player is better than me, that I'm better than these other two players. Now, going into what we're talking about for the target audience, the sort of use of social class. So people who are in the sort of lower social classes because they're in uni, they don't have the disposable cash flow. It means the idea that they can aspire to have a really good rank within these games through hard work. This is going to be something that's quite good. Then on the other hand, because sort of, these games require grinding, you can't buy levels, you can't pay to improve your experience, it won't be appealing to those social classes of B and A. So because their sort of disposable income, it's not going to be as effective within these games. Therefore, like I said before, the lower sort of social classes are going to have more appeal to this game because they're on equal standing with every single other player, and they can achieve a level higher than someone who is, with sort of speech marks, higher class than them. And it's going to be quite an effective way at appealing to their sort of psyche and sort of like mentally how they sort of react and feel about this games. I will just quickly sort of go over religion. I have gone over it in one of my other ones, saying about how the choices and how it can sort of appeal. So, for example, in Diablo, there's a choice of some sort of religious based one. So you've got Crusader. I'll tell you what, we'll go on to the career hero and we can sort of show you the differences. So we have a witch doctor, a monk, and a crusader. These three, I should say, are all going to be very sort of religious based. The crusader he's it literally says it here. He's a religious warrior, and he's committed to expunging evil from the world. This really ties in with the whole idea of Christianity and how the Crusaders were very religious. It was something that was very strong within them. And then I think by having this in your game, it can really appeal to a sort of a Christian audience because they're going to feel very more sort of ingrained with the game. They're going to feel more emotive with their own characters, meaning their sort of user experience is improved, so the game is more effective. Again, you got monks straight away, a holy warrior. This is going to be appealing to those religious audiences, and same goes for the witch doctor. Though it's not explicitly said, this can sort of have a similar effect as well. So within sort of dungeon crawlers, we'll go on to a couple of conventions. There never really is a narrative. So, there's normally a theme like fantasy or tabletop games, RPGs, but there's never really a very strong narrative. I'll go into The Binding of Isaac, which is technically a dungeon crawler, and I can just show you the way that it doesn't have a narrative. So the narrative is you're trapped in the basement of your home and you're trying to escape your mum, who is evil. And because of that, you know, there's not really a narrative. It's just escape. You know, there's no lore, there's nothing like that. We'll go into Diablo. You know, there is the campaign which has a narrative, but if you ask sort of the majority of Diablo players now, they're not going to be playing the story. They're going to be going in, they're going to be grinding, they're going to be trying to improve their items, and that's sort of what they're more focused on rather than the narrative of the game now. So we'll just quickly return. Leveling. I have spoken about the rank and how you level up your rank, and I'll just quickly sort of go over this one as well. So in Diablo, when you first start the game, we'll show an example. Same as you're going to get. Ignore the Paragon points, you won't normally have this.
I smell fear and death. The fallen star is near.
So here we go. How much damage are we doing? 5. 5, 6 damage. You know, this is slow. This is very slow paced. This is very easy. You're only taking 1 hit to kill enemies. You know, it's easy. It's early game. Now, we'll quickly have a look at a character. So now, because of my level advantage, of my rank advantage, I've achieved sort of quite a late game thing. I'll see if I can show you this through level. So actually I will have to leave for this one. Okay, difficulty. Now, the difficulty we were at was normal. This was where we sort of begun. You know, there's nothing. You know, this is normal. We were doing 5-6 damage on normal. We are level 1. This character is on Torment 16, which is the hardest difficulty in the game, and therefore, you know, it should be a lot harder. Do some enemies. You know, the sort of damage we're dealing, you can see the numbers on the page. It's more in the ranges of, let's just quickly, let's see if we can get a stronger, you know, I see billions on there. So the idea of leveling means that once you're later in the game, you can still play and it still has lots of replayability because the enemies are now scaled with me, meaning when I do 380 billion damage, they take 4 of that to kill them rather than dealing 5 or 6 damage. This means that sort of that the games you can play them for a lot longer. It always feels like a very long game. I will say the whole thing of, I think just generally that sort of appeals to lots of audience because it doesn't make the game boring and means that they can keep playing sort of throughout time. We'll go over sort of a third theme. So, sorry, a third convention being themes. Most dungeon crawlers, Binding of Isaac is an exception, are going to be fantasy based, just like Diablo. So the other example is Torchlight 2, though I can't sort of show you that one. So I can just show you a picture of Torchlight 2 now. So Torchlight 2 is this. It's basically the same, very fantasy world, very Diablo-esque, and that's sort of the main sort of theme genre it's going to fill. This is really going to appeal to those sort of nerdy, very nerdy audiences, very geeky audiences. They're really going to like this, and it's going to get a really good response from them. We'll now just go on to the next section. So character, I already spoke about how you can change them, so you can choose your class, and it allows you to roleplay. This is going to be really effective for most of the people who play the game, because they can then choose how they want to play, and it means whether you're a boy or a girl, you can choose whether you play a boy or a girl, or if you're very, very masculine, or if you're not very masculine, you can choose a character that's more suited to you. I did briefly touch on weapons and gear, and I'll just touch on it again. So you can see that this character I'm playing as now, you know, it's sort of they're using level 70 gear. It's highly rolled, so it's got good stats. It's even got the ancient rarity as well, which is even better. Then if I were to say go back to that early game character,
I smell
so
fear and death.
basically absolutely
The
nothing
fallen star is near.
besides Worn Knuckles, which is a level 1 fist item, dealing basically no damage at all. Now, this sort of, I guess, sort of big sort of change in items really allows the players to grind. This sort of gives players who enjoy playing a lot of the time, such as the uni students and the sort of the little bit of a younger audience, though it's still over 16, it means they're going to really have a strong attraction to the game. So sort of carrying on, going back to again the weapons and gear, you've got the high tier builds, the mid tier builds, the low tier builds. This specific gear and the whole idea of leveling to grind for this gear is going to be really good for these uni audiences and for these sort of younger audiences because it's going to be really effective at giving them lots of stuff to do while they're playing, meaning they'll play for longer and have a better experience. We'll just sort of talk about the sort of level design, especially in, so we'll talk about this one first. You know, there's not much sort of going on here. There's, woods, it's not really a dungeon. There's woods, a town, some birds, trees. We then will quickly leave this one and we'll just show you a different type of level design. So we've gone from forests, deep woods, spooky woods to an oasis, a desert. It's not anything like before. This is sort of the whole idea of the fact it's all different, and the way that you have a experience where you've got different stages, different levels. It means that they're sort of outside, and it takes away the whole idea of just doing dungeons, so it makes it a lot less boring. You've got more things to see, and it just means the quality of the game is going to be better, so the audience is going to have a better, more positive response because they may prefer going into dungeons, they may prefer caves. It's really sort of personal opinion, and it can cater to lots of personal opinions. So in terms of our target audience, which is going to be men aged 16 to 26, they may, if they were, say, someone who enjoys sort of dark dungeoning, they've got the option of going into dungeons. If there's someone who likes staying outdoors, they like rushing through sort of oasis, this is all personal opinion. So it's going to be more effective in that sense. So it really takes into advantage for the different sort of psyches, and it means that the younger audience who normally gets bored of stuff quicker isn't going to get as bored. Um, I think the camera angle for these games is similar to RTS games because it's quite a strategic view. So you can see this in Diablo, we're far out. We can see everything on the page. If we go to Binding of Isaac, again, we're far out. We can see everything on the page. We're not constricted in our view at all. So I think that you have to use this camera angle, and because this is sort of a niche of and a very strong aspect of the dungeon crawler genre, as it allows you to develop strategies while playing and while you're fighting the enemies. And this is good because it allows the audiences, for example, the younger ones who enjoy the sort of fast-paced action, to create strategies for the game and to be able to progress later, because without this camera angle they wouldn't. Um, I'm sort of going to conclude now, and so in conclusion, the dungeon crawler genre is quite similar to sort of RPGs and fantasies, and it takes lots of themes and conventions from these. The main audience is going to be men aged 16 to 25 or 26. This is just because of they're going to be sort of E to C1, and they're going to enjoy the grind of the game, and they're going to enjoy achieving a rank, sort of a social class within these games. And then they can't be sort of beaten by older players or people with more money. So that's why they do it. Also, obviously, the use of the sort of sexualized characters and the hypermasculinity really defines that men are going to be the main audience. The other one is going to be sort of adults, 40 to 55. These are going to be the people playing these games for nostalgia, playing with fantasy for nostalgia, like the Dungeons and Dragons players, the sort of the older geeks within the sort of audience. So maybe potentially appealing to these ones. through the use of the themes and more the narrative and the lore, that's going to be a secondary audience that will be well appealed to through these methods, and it's going to be quite effective. Okay, that is